The kingdom burned as the night sky filled with smoke. Towers cracked under fire, and the ground shook with the march of enemy soldiers. Men and women fought with swords and shields at the gates, but the enemy came in waves too strong to stop. Arrows rained down, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Queen Maria stood among her guards, blade in hand, her armor stained with dust and blood. She had sworn never to leave her people. When the enemy broke through the outer wall, she rushed forward with her warriors. Blades clashed around her, steel ringing as men fell on both sides. She cut down 2 soldiers before a spear struck her side. She staggered, blood running down her armor, and her guards pulled her back. The enemy roared in triumph, pushing harder. The city streets filled with chaos. Fires spread, children cried, and the gates shook under battering rams. Still the defenders fought with desperate hearts. In the middle of the clash, a young farm boy named Ethan fought with a dull sword. He had joined the battle only days ago, but he swung his weapon with all his strength, refusing to step back. Ethan's eyes caught sight of the queen collapsing. Her guards tried to lift her, but her face had grown pale and weak. The royal doctor shouted that she would not live unless blood was given at once. Strong blood was needed, yet none dared step forward, and hesitated, fear in their eyes as the battle raged around them. Without thinking, Ethan pushed through the guards. He dropped his sword, knelt beside Maria, and said he would give his blood. The doctor warned that he could die, that his body might not survive the loss. Ethan did not care. The queen had fought for them, and he would not let her die while he still breathed. The doctor cut his arm, pressing the wound to save the queen. Ethan felt his strength leaving him as his blood flowed.
Ow.
Darkness pressed on his eyes, but he clenched his teeth and stayed still. Maria's chest rose, her breath steadier, her hand clutching his arm as if she drew life from him. The guards stared in silence. The farm boy had given what no soldier dared. As the battle raged outside, a bond of blood was forged inside those walls, a bond that would change the fate of the kingdom. Ethan woke in a chamber lit by torches. His body felt weak, and his arms trembled when he tried to rise. His head spun, and for a moment he thought he was still on the battlefield. Then he saw Queen Maria sitting nearby, her side wrapped in bandages, her eyes watching him. She looked stronger, her breath steady, her face no longer pale. She told him that his blood had saved her life. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. She gave him water and said that what he had done would never be forgotten. No soldier, no knight, not even her closest guards had stepped forward, but he had. Ethan lowered his eyes, saying he was only a farm boy. Maria answered that courage was not born of title, but of heart. Outside the chamber, the city still bore the wounds of war. The invaders had pulled back for the moment, but scouts warned they would return with greater numbers. The generals argued that the kingdom could not hold another assault. Fear grew among the people, and many whispered that surrender might be the only way to live. As days passed, Ethan felt strange changes in his body. His wounds healed faster than before. He felt bursts of strength in his arms when he trained with a sword. His eyes saw clearer in the dark halls. When he told the doctor, the man shook his head in disbelief. He said no one should have survived giving that much blood, yet Ethan not only lived but seemed stronger. Rumors spread among the soldiers. They said the bond between the queen and Ethan was more than sacrifice, that his blood carried power the kingdom had never seen. Some called him chosen, others feared him. Yet when Maria spoke, she silenced the whispers. She declared Ethan a hero and protector of the crown. One evening, the queen walked with him on the high walls. Torches burned below, and the night carried the sound of distant drums. The enemy was gathering again. Maria told Ethan that the kingdom needed hope, and he had become that hope. Ethan gripped the stone edge and swore he would not let the kingdom fall. He had given his blood once, and he was ready to give his life if the time came. The enemy came at dawn with drums and horns that shook the city walls. Rows of soldiers filled the fields, their banners high, their siege towers rolling forward. The defenders stood on the walls, swords in hand, fear in their eyes. Queen Maria stood in armor with her guards, her voice firm as she called her people to fight. Beside her stood Ethan, no longer looking like a farm boy, but like a warrior ready to face death. Arrows filled the sky as the enemy charged. Shields raised, men screamed, and the clash shook the ground. Fire caught on rooftops, as stones from catapults struck the city. Ethan did not wait. He leaped into the fight, his sword cutting through the first wave of soldiers. His strength shocked both friend and foe, swung with power no man had seen, breaking shields and throwing men aside. The defenders rallied behind him. Seeing Ethan fight gave them courage. They struck harder, shouting his name, pushing back against the tide. Queen Maria rode into the battle on horseback, her blade flashing as she cut down soldiers who tried to reach her men. Side by side, Queen and farm boy turned warrior fought with fire in their hearts. The enemy warlord marched forward, his armor black, his axe dripping with blood. He shouted for Ethan to face him. The two clashed in the heart of the battle. Steel rang as sword struck axe, sparks flying. The warlord was strong and brutal, but Ethan moved with speed that stunned him. Every strike shook Ethan's arms, yet he refused to fall back. The fight raged while soldiers circled around, watching with wide eyes. The warlord roared and swung with all his might, but Ethan caught the blow and forced him back. With one final strike, Ethan drove his blade through the warlord's chest. The enemy leader fell to the ground, and silence followed before the defenders shouted in triumph. The enemy army broke. Fear spread through their ranks and men dropped their weapons and fled the field. The defenders chased them down, driving them far from the gates. The kingdom had stood strong when all thought it would fall. On the battlefield, Ethan stood with blood on his hands, his chest rising and falling. Queen Maria came to him, her eyes fierce with pride. The farm boy who had given his blood had now given victory. The battlefield was covered with broken weapons and the cries of the wounded. Smoke rose into the sky and the air smelled of blood and ash. The enemy had fled, but the cost of victory weighed heavy. Men carried their fallen brothers, and women wept in the ruins of the city. Queen Maria stood before her people with her armor scratched and her sword stained. She raised her hand and silence spread. She told them that their courage had saved the kingdom, that their fight had proved the spirit of their land could not be broken. Then she turned to Ethan, who stood among the soldiers, his clothes torn, his face marked with blood and sweat. She called him forward. In front of the army, she spoke of how he had given his blood to save her life, when all others had stood in fear. She spoke of how he had faced the warlord and struck him down when defeat seemed certain. She declared that the kingdom now had a new protector, the Blood Warrior, a man who fought not for glory but for the people. The soldiers shouted his name until the walls shook with their voices. Ethan lowered his head, his heart heavy with the memory of those who had died. He did not feel like a hero. Yet the eyes of the people were filled with hope when they looked at him. Maria placed her hand on his shoulder and told him that the bond they shared would guard the kingdom for years to come. In the days that followed, the city began to rebuild. Men repaired the broken gates, women carried stone to raise new walls, and children brought water to the workers. Though the scars of war remained, the people stood tall, their hearts stronger than before. Ethan trained with the soldiers each day, his strength growing, his speed sharper than ever. He felt the bond of blood inside him, a fire that drove him forward. When he walked through the streets, people bowed, not out of fear, but out of respect. From the high tower, Queen Maria and Ethan looked over the land they had saved. Drums of war might rise again in distant kingdoms, but they were ready. One had given her crown and courage, the other had given his blood and strength. Together they would face whatever storm came next.